The moon, a spectral eye in the inky sky, cast long, dancing shadows through the ancient cedar trees. Kenji, the samurai, stood like a weathered monument, his crimson armor, polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the pale light. He was a man etched with the stories of battle, his face a roadmap of hardship and resilience, his eyes holding the quiet intensity of a predator on the hunt. The intricate dragon etched onto his chestplate seemed to writhe in the shifting moonlight, a silent testament to the generations of warriors who had carried the responsibility of guarding the Whispering Grove. He wasn't alone. The forest itself seemed to breathe around him, the rustle of leaves, not just the wind, but a hushed conversation of ancient spirits. He could feel the weight of the grove's secrets pressing on him, a tangible force that resonated deep within his bones. Tonight was different. The air thrummed with an energy that spoke of something more than the usual. Nocturnal wanderers. He gripped the worn leather of his katana's hilt, the familiar weight a comfort against the encroaching unease. Perspective shift. Hana, a young woman shrouded in a cloak, the color of the forest floor, moved with the silent grace of a shadow. Unlike Kenji's rigid posture, her movements were fluid, almost serpentine. She was a descendant of the mountain clans, her knowledge of the forest as potent as any weapon. Her heart, usually a steady drumbeat of forest rhythm, hammered a frantic tattoo against her ribs. Something was wrong. She had felt the shift in the grove's energy, a disharmony that sent shivers down her spine. Her people had long spoken of the ancient magic woven into the forest, and she sensed that it was being disturbed. Awakened from its dormant slumber, she moved toward the heart of the grove, her bare feet barely disturbing the fallen leaves. The moon, usually a comforting guide, seemed to be watching her with an almost wary gaze. She could hear the faint, rhythmic clang of metal on metal, a sound out of place in the peaceful silence. She knew, with a certainty that settled in the pit of her stomach, that she was not alone, and the source of the anomaly was drawing closer. Perspective shift. Kenji's senses were heightened. The faint scent of sulfur tickled his nostrils, an unnatural odor that battled against the earthy aroma of the trees. The rhythmic clang he had detected moments ago solidified into a distinct sound, the scrape of shovel against rock. He moved with the disciplined speed of a seasoned warrior, his katana a silver blur as he navigated the tangled undergrowth. He knew he was close, and the urgency that gnawed at his soul intensified. He was not simply protecting the grove, he was protecting the balance it represented. It was a responsibility that weighed heavier than any armor. He broke through the foliage, his eyes scanning the clearing. He saw them, three figures silhouetted against the moonlight. They were garbed in coarse, dark clothes, and their movements were clumsy and frantic, not of warriors but of scavengers. They were digging furiously at the base of the ancient monolith that stood at the center of the clearing, their shovels chipping away at the stone with alarming speed. Kenji's heart pounded in his chest. The monolith was not just a rock, it was the keystone of the grove's magic. And these trespassers were actively dismantling it. His sword sang as it left its scabbard, a hungry whisper cutting through the night. And quat, halt, and quat. His voice was like gravel, a command born of years of discipline and battle. The figures froze, their heads snapping up in alarm. One of them, a burly man with a scarred face, spat on the ground. Well, look what we have here. A tin soldier come to play hero, and quat. Kenji remained unyielding. And quat. This place is forbidden. Leave now, or face the consequences, and quat. The scarred man laughed, a harsh grating sound. And quat, consequences? What's an old man with a shiny toy gonna do? He raised his own crude weapon, a rusty pickaxe, and the other two did the same with their shovels. Perspective shift. Hana stopped at the edge of the clearing, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. She saw Kenji, the solitary samurai, facing off against three brutish men. The sight was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. She could feel the ancient power of the grove swirling around them, its energy amplified by the tension in the air. She knew she had to act, but she didn't know how to intervene without risking the delicate balance of the situation. She retreated deeper into the shadows, her mind racing, searching for a solution. The forest was her ally, her weapon as much as Kenji's sword was his. She needed to find a way to tip the scales, to give Kenji the advantage. Her eyes scanned the trees, her mind searching for a way to use the forest's natural defenses, and she had one idea, one as old as the forest itself. Perspective shift. Kenji. Kenji moved with the speed and precision he had honed over decades of rigorous training. He clashed with the scarred man, the sharp clang of metal on metal echoing through the clearing. He parried a blow aimed at his head, his katana a blur of silver light as he countered with a swift strike aimed at the man's arm. The other two scavengers swarmed around him, their shovels crashing against his armor. He dodged and weaved, using their clumsy movements against them, but he was outnumbered. He knew he couldn't hold out forever. He needed to finish this quickly. He needed to reach the monolith and protect its damaged base. He made a calculated maneuver, using his opponent's weight against him, and sent the scarred man sprawling. He turned to face the others, his gaze unwavering, but he caught a flicker of movement in the periphery, a subtle shift in the shadows near the trees. He didn't know what it was, but instinctively trusted it. Suddenly, the ground beneath the two remaining scavengers seemed to shift. Roots, thick as pythons, erupted from beneath the earth, entangling their feet and throwing them off balance. They stumbled and cried out in alarm, struggling against the unexpected assault. Kenji was granted the opening he needed, and with lightning speed, he disabled them with quick, precise strikes of the flat of his blade. They fell to the ground, groaning. His gaze moved back to the scarred man, a snarl curling across his lips, but the man had taken the opportunity to flee. Perspective shift. Hana watched from the shadows, a sense of satisfaction blooming in her chest. The roots had done their job, giving Kenji the breather he needed. She stepped into the clearing, her cloak billowing behind her like a shadow. Kenji turned to face her, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He had sensed her presence, but he hadn't expected a young woman, veiled by shadows. And quat, you, and quat, he said, his voice rough with exertion. And quat, who are you, and quat? I am Hana, she replied, stepping into the moonlight, her face now visible. And like you, I am a guardian of this place. The forest protects its own. Kenji lowered his sword, the tension draining from his body. He had never expected to find an ally in the fight to protect the grove, particularly one so unexpected. He looked at the monolith, the damaged base a stark reminder of the threat. And quat, they sought to steal the power of the grove, and quat, he said, his voice grim. And quat, they must not succeed. Hana nodded, her gaze following his. And quat, the forest will not allow it, and quat, she replied, a fierce determination glinting in her eyes. And quat, we will protect this place, together, and quat. The moon continued its slow, silent journey across the sky, casting its spectral glow over the whispering grove. Kenji and Hana stood side by side, two guardians of destiny, united by a shared purpose. The night was far from over, but for the first time, they both felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that they were not alone in the fight to protect the ancient secrets of the forest. They both knew that the shadows had not been vanquished, but they would face them together. The journey had only just begun.